I'm Jim Check. You're watching Now Media. Joining me this morning, Janae Herman from MNP, a licensed insolvency trustee, and lots of worries in British Columbia over debt repayment.
Yeah, M&P does surveys, and we're in our 33rd wave of doing this survey. So that means we've been doing it for over 8 years. And the survey measures attitudes towards consumer debt and gauges people's ability to repay their bills, endure unexpected expenses, and absorb interest rate fluctuations without approaching insolvency. So in the latest survey, we've seen where nearly 3 in 5 are concerned about repaying debt, even if the interest rates decline. And this is at an all-time high. It's up 14 basis points from last survey.
That's amazing. That's the majority of British Columbians, and that's 3 in 5. That's what, about 60 some odd percent, 60%, something like that?
Yeah, close to 60%. It's 58%. Yes.
Yeah, and that's even if the rates go down. So, I mean, we did see, we had the interest rates, prior to COVID, we had interest rates at all-time lows at 0.25 with the Bank of Canada rate.
That's
and obviously
true.
Some people,
prior to COVID.
Yeah, some people were getting really low mortgage rates at that point too, like in the, like 1% kind of rate, some longer term stuff. But now a lot of those mortgages are coming up for renewal, and they're at quite a substantially higher rate than what they had when they first did that.
Yes, and I think it's tied to the interest rates, but it also might, or tied to mortgages, but it also might be tied to the unsecured debt loads people are carrying, because if the interest rates go down, it's not really affecting their repayment on those debts, because those interest rates aren't coming down. Your
Right.
your credit card doesn't, your line of credit will.
Yeah, so the credit card debt, obviously people did a lot of credit card debt as they continued to struggle with this economic uncertainty, inflation, all those things kind of drove more and more people towards utilizing their credit cards.
Yes, that's true. So the more we use our credit card, the higher we might be into debt, and the more we might struggle to get rid of it. So, if we started building that credit and we start building, well, what's the plan now to get rid of it? Are we thinking about that? And, if I meet with people, we're looking at, what's your 5-year plan? Can you do it on your own? And we can explore what their amount of debt is. If they were to do it on their own, what would their monthly cost be, and their overall cost to get rid of it? So $20,000 debt at an interest rate of 21%, you're going to be paying almost $550 for 5 years, and it's going to cost you over $12,000 in interest, in addition to the 20 grand that you have accumulated on that credit card debt.
Yeah, and it says here in your study here that more than half say they regret the amount of debt they've taken on. And I guess there was a lot of easy debt too, even if you go to like stores and they were doing, like, you buy a shirt at one of the fancier stores and they would give it to you in payments, like, 3 easy payments, and then people just continue to kind of like add more payments. And obviously the same thing with their credit cards until you get to the point where it's like a breaking point.
Yeah, if you think about, it's almost like buying something on installments and buy now, pay later. It doesn't necessarily mean we can afford what we were buying, but it makes us think we can, because we're not paying the whole amount up front. And we've seen that at the furniture store more than in the clothing store in the past, but I believe that it's becoming more predominant that retailers are trying to find ways to sell their products and make it as, make their business work, as maybe the economy has shifted and changed, and people are starting to watch where their dollar goes.
Yeah, I mean, there's this easy credit that's been available even on Apple. Like, you can buy your Apple computer on payments. You can buy like Lululemon on payments. There's a whole bunch of places that are offering these things, and it sounds good at the time because you're only paying a third or a quarter of what the price is. But then all these things start to pile up, especially if you've racked up credit card debt. But that number that you say that's a record high of over a majority of British Columbians now concerned over that debt repayment, and then more than half say they regret taking on that debt. What's their path forward?
Well, their path forward would be to assess their circumstances, each individual. So when you're looking at What are you carrying for debt? Are you looking at your ability to service it? And if you're never getting out of that debt, maybe you have to talk to a licensed insolvency trustee and review your options to find that path that's going to be right for you. And the path out of debt can vary from individual to individual. So what might be right for you isn't going to be right for me. And what's right
Yeah.
for me might not be right for the next guy.
So if you've kind of made yourself a mess that you can't kind of carry anymore, so then is that when they reach out to somebody like yourself and then say, how do I get myself out of this mess? Is that kind of like a consolidation loan, or is it bankruptcy in there somewhere too? What are the options for people?
Yeah, so the first one we can look at with them, can they do it on their own? And we look at that through the budgeting. Do they need extra budgeting tools to cut back on the unnecessary expenses to get to where they're actually paying down principal and not interest? Do they have assets that they can either sell or capitalize on? Will their financial institution help them through a consolidation loan? Or is it a consolidation through a settlement offer to their creditors? So it really does matter, who it is you owe, what type of debt you have, because when it comes to secured debt, there's no compromise there. Like, you've come into a contract to purchase a house or purchase a car, and that's an obligation. And if you want to keep that asset, you're going to have to comply with that obligation. But sometimes you need to get rid of some of the unsecured debt to be able to do that as well.
Yeah, and in British Columbians, according to your study here, more likely than any other province to feel stalled, having to put their lives on hold. Why is British Columbia kind of in the worst spot than any other province?
Well, the people surveyed, they're the ones that are coming out with how they feel about it. And it appears that they're delaying in purchasing a house. So is the cost of houses in British Columbia higher than in some of the other provinces? Because as you go across Canada, I would imagine that maybe Alberta, the prairie provinces, maybe the cost of purchasing isn't as high. You get back into Ontario, maybe certain areas in Ontario might be higher, but maybe overall in the bigger communities in BC, the cost of housing with the interest rates as they currently are making people put that purchase on hold.
Yeah, and then obviously the economy in general right now with this tariff kind of trade war kind of happening too, that doesn't really add or bode well for like job security as well.
Yeah, job security is a big issue. Like, what jobs are tied to the tariff rates, and sometimes we don't know the answer to that question. So, as the tariffs get put on, the cost of purchasing things get higher, but then the ability to sell those same things becomes more difficult because of the cost of purchasing them. So it's a vicious circle.
Yeah, so is one of the options just complete bankruptcy though then, and just say try to get a clean slate? Is that like if somebody's made such a mess then that, like they've used their credit cards maybe to even like buy groceries? I know there's quite a few people in that position as well.
Yeah, people use credit cards for their day-to-day expenses because they haven't got the money in their budget to meet all their obligations. So bankruptcy is an option. In doing the bankruptcy, we're looking at what are you going to do going forward, because now you don't have credit to manage your day-to-day expenses. So it's making sure that the money goes to the necessities and cutting out the things that you can't do. And again, that's stalling people's life because now, they're not able to do some of the things they would like to do because they can't afford it.
Yeah, well, they can't buy a car on credit anymore, and they can't, it's going to be tough to get a home and all that stuff. So, and then even tough to rent is lots of times too with a bankruptcy on your thing. What is the path in bankruptcy? So they file for bankruptcy. Does that absolve them of all debt? And then what's the path forward for them to ever get it credit again, or what's the timeline there?
Yeah, bankruptcy absolves a person of most of the unsecured debt. There is certain debts that you can't get rid of. Most individuals don't have fines and penalties imposed by the courts. Most people don't have student loans, but student loans don't go away unless you've been out of school for a certain amount of time. So and you can never get rid of family maintenance debt through a bankruptcy. So if you owe child or spousal support, it doesn't go away. So there's certain debts that don't go away in a bankruptcy scenario, but the majority of unsecured debts do. And then the path forward would be that to be able to get into a house in the future, it's starting to rebuild your credit. And rebuilding your credit would be, do you have a vehicle loan and you're making your payments, you're not missing things, that's being reported positively on a credit bureau report. They may have to look at getting a secured credit card, so where they put down a deposit and then they use the credit card, they pay it in full each month. I would tell people, if you're using credit, like a credit card to rebuild credit, you're not using it to expand what you can spend. You're using it for something in your budget, less than 35% of the available credit you've been provided, to build your credit rating, because that's the tool that you're choosing to use to help build that. You need to use credit to build that credit rating back up. And then I also recommend that if you're trying to get into a house or into the housing market, that you may want to talk to a mortgage broker to what are the lenders looking for before you'll qualify for a good interest rate. Sometimes you qualify for a mortgage, but the interest rates aren't good. And then of course you're going to struggle, and if interest rates go up, your situation's going to get dire again.
So what's your advice to British Columbians that are in that, where they're not quite at that bankruptcy state yet, but they're kind of like really struggling? Obviously, it causes some emotional stress as well and causes some stress on relationships. How is the step to kind of just reach out to a person like yourself and say, I just come in and have a meeting and kind of like go over what some options are?
Yes, that's a good idea. We go over we meet with all types of different people. Some of them we're able to help through a proposal. We're trying to look at ways for people to avoid bankruptcy. So a settlement offer to the creditors is a step up. You're repaying a portion of your debt, sometimes almost all of your debt, depending on each individual circumstance. But before we get to, an insolvency event such as a proposal or a bankruptcy, we're also looking at what could that individual do on their own based on their circumstances to deal with the debt before they need to do a proposal or a bankruptcy. Can we avoid those options?
And to the rest of the British Columbians that aren't at that spot yet, but maybe digging a hole right now, do you have any advice for them to kind of like monitor their expenses so they don't go over a certain level?
Yeah, start monitoring what comes in, looking at where it has to go over where you want it to go. So, what are the necessities in life? So what do I need? And then what are your financial goals? So what do you want to do with the leftover money? So if, you're happy just living paycheck to paycheck, that works for some people. It doesn't work for me. For me, it's, looking at what comes in, where does it have to go, so I can make my plans financially as to what I want to see my financial future look like. And so it might be avoiding going out to eat or, doing any big purchases on credit. So saving up for the big purchases. Yeah, I could use my credit card to make the purchase, but the money's there to pay it off. So being more conscientious and mindful of what you're doing with your money.
And doesn't that start with a budget so you can actually clearly see, like, here's the in and then here's all the outs, and then there's tons of AI tools out there now, or I'm sure you guys have some tools out there as well, where people can plug in all their expenses, maybe even write off their credit cards, and you can see, because I know I've gone through with some people, and they don't believe they're spending that much money. Then you'll see Starbucks, and all these other costs that just, they think, well, it's $8, $9, $8, $9, and then they don't realize that all these little things add up to, like substantial amounts at the end of the month.
At times up by 30 days if you do it every day. So tracking where the money goes is a really big key. So a lot of people don't do that. They think they're doing it in their heads, but if you actually write it down, categorize it, use your debit card rather than a credit card for purchases, like, tracking your purchases, because if we took the money out of our pocket, we would see the money disappearing out of our pocket. But when we use a debit card or a credit card, we aren't actually seeing the money disappear until we reconcile our accounts too. Where did the money go? And so it is tracking what comes in, where is it going, and then making an informed decision as to where you want your money to go. What's your end goal?
Yeah. When I was a young guy, we working at the sawmill there when I was in 1920, everything was in your wallet. You had a payday, you got yourself a bunch of 20s. And then as you move through the week, you decided you're eating less and less and less as you're going out, right? Because you could see what was in there, right? There was no credit or debit cards or anything like that. It was what was in your wallet is how you budgeted. But nowadays, there's just such a vast array of additional, I guess it's a smorgasbord of credit until you get yourself in trouble by indulging too much in this available free credit. Or free,
Yeah.
not free, credit.
No. It's not free. It's a product that we're buying into. So it's if you decide that you want a pair of jeans, you go to the store and you pick out what you are wanting and what the price point is you're going to pay. Credit's similar to that. It's being sold to us, and somebody's making money because we're using the credit.
Yeah. I mean, a debit card might be, like it's hard to carry cash these days. Some places won't even take cash, but a debit card is likely one of the better things to do. Then you can see your balance kind of dwindling down as you get through your month paying your rent or your mortgage and the car payments. And those car payments and a mortgage or rental costs are some of the bigger ones, right? And then food costs obviously are big as well.
I have seen that some people's car costs, when you take in the accumulated, what do we estimate for repairs and maintenance in a year, what's their fuel, what's their car payment, what's their insurance, can be more than what their rent is.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Like some of the cars, because they get attracted by that shiny trinket, and they look at it, and it just gets so. And they take more care of that car than their own bodies and all kinds of things. So, yeah, it is an indulgence that is definitely hurting a lot of people with the insurance, and then gas and oil and maintenance and all those different things. And then the bigger thing that people don't prepare for if you're living paycheck to paycheck is those unforeseen things, a layoff, a health emergency, all kinds of different things that can really affect the amount of income that's coming in.
It can, yeah. What if something's going to affect the type of income that's coming in? We've always been advised, and I remember this going back years and years, have an emergency fund. How much should the emergency fund be? It varies from who you talk to, and I don't think there's any have-tos. But I would recommend at least 3 months of money of what your regular expenses are in the bank ready to go. So not necessarily 3 months of income, but 3 months of expenses. What does that look like, or more?
My dad taught me. Yeah, my dad taught me a long time ago is to put $100, fold it up in your wallet there, hide it, and never take it out unless you're in a dire emergency. And I packed that around until I stopped carrying a wallet. But I just kind of a habit that kind of stuck around. But yeah, it's a lot more than $100 these days. $100 doesn't go very far. But 3 months is that cushion that people require. And the other one that when I talk to some young people, it's like you can open now these trading accounts like Wealthsimple. I think there's a few other ones that have zero trading fees, and you can buy fractional shares. And then you can start making better choices by investing that $8 in a fractional share versus into that expensive coffee that you don't really need anyway.
Yeah, you make a choice of, if I'm not going to spend it here, but I have it, where will I spend it? Yeah. And if you're spending it on you, so setting up a savings plan, investment plan, and being cautious with that as well, because I've had people come to me that had some money and they purchased what they called penny stocks, and they really lost it all because they didn't have
black,
a clue.
Right? Go to the casino that way, right? Go put it on 22 black, right? But
yeah.
So I go ahead.
I think that when we invest money out there in these at Wealthsimple or Qtrade, Questrade, whatever those platforms might be, be cognizant of what are people saying about it before. Like a lot of times you can find conversations that not all of them are truthful, but find conversation as to goods, bads, and ugly about certain investments that you might be looking into.
And I would suggest to people just starting on it to buy the bigger companies, so that you're not buying, like a penny stock buy, because you can buy fractional shares of Microsoft or of Alphabet or different things, and you're better off with that fractional share of, say, Alphabet than that coffee, because the coffee is, like the high sugar coffee is not going to do you any good. And even if the share value of Alphabet goes down, you're better off than that coffee. And it also teaches it then to start studying and learning on how you can start actually making money work for you, as opposed to you becoming a slave to your money and your debts.
Yeah, we have to get there though. We have to get rid of the debts before we really start saving. It doesn't make sense to save if we're paying interest on debt.
Absolutely. And how do we get financial literacy into young people? How do we get that so they don't end up, as, like they're coming out of high school? And how do we get more financial literacy so they didn't dig that hole? Because it is so tempting, right? When you're there and you're looking at that shirt or something like that and you want it, but it's like $150 for a shirt at some of these places. And you want it, you don't have the 150, but all of a sudden, you can buy it for 30, and you're just like, wow, I can do that, right? And then all of a sudden, you just get more and more, and you start using your credit card at the grocery store, because when you go to the grocery stores, you need it. You tell yourself you need it. Obviously, you do need food, and then you just kind of keep digging a hole.
I think for the youth, it comes from the family first. It depends, like the school might be giving some education. I'm not up on what the school board and what the curriculum is that's offered, but it's also the some of the courses that kids might choose or not choose to get into. So even if you took a basic bookkeeping course, it might just give you a thought process of how does the ins and outs work. But I think it comes from family, and it doesn't have to just be the parents. It can be grandparents, aunts and uncles, just talking about money in front of kids.
Yeah.
When I grew up, they didn't do that. Nobody talked about money in front of us.
Same thing. Financial literacy is something that most people should try to get into their lives, even people at my age. Financial literacy makes a lot of sense. And then budgeting, obviously one of the biggest and strongest tools to have, because you see the ins and outs, and then at least you're more aware of what's going on as opposed to getting surprised, right? So I do thank you for your time today, and I think this is like the second or third time we've had you on, and that's great. So we look forward to the next time, hopefully in better circumstances for British Columbians.
Hopefully in better circumstances for British Columbians. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janine. All right, bye now, and thank you for watching media.
Just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent.